His names, we need to know about them, how to apply them, ponder the meanings behind them.
New class alert! Sunnahfollowers presents the names of Allah. Please join us every Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard with Sister Samah. Streaming on all major platforms. Right here, channel Sunnahfollowers.
So this is our second session, inshallah, in our workshop about the beautiful names of Allah, or the holy names of Allah. And I made some changes. The change that I made is that instead of, tackling only the 99 names, I was actually considering tackling the most prominent things, the names that are really very important for us to adhere to and to understand. So I will not strictly go through only the 99 names. So you might find names that are not enlisted in those 99, but they're still very important to know. Now, again, let me just remind you, for those who are joining us for the first time, that I'm an Egyptian teacher, basically, and I've been teaching English for quite a while now. I even have my master's degree in education management from the US, and I currently live in Egypt. And one important thing you need to know is that, unfortunately, I don't have, my degree in Islamic studies, something that I'm actually considering doing. But for the time being, what I am doing with you here is sharing knowledge. So I'm not in a position where I'll be a scholar or a tutor or whatever. I'm just sharing some of my readings that I have been doing in the field of, the names of Allah. And so we're here to learn, both you and I. I would appreciate it very much if we can share our minds, our thoughts at the end of the session, and see how the understanding of those names might have made a difference. Now, for today, before we start the magnificent name of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, I just felt like I needed to go through even in more depth about the effects of worshiping those names, of understanding those names. We did discuss that in the first session, but there are a few things that I wanted to add, so allow me to do so. And now I'm going to share my screen to show you something that I have here for you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay. All right, so as I said, I just removed the number 99, and I just left holy names, the holy names of Allah, because we might actually tackle other names than those listed as the 99. All right, now, the effects of worshipping those beautiful names of Allah and His supreme attributes. We did discuss a few things last time, but then here, I wanted to stop a minute and discuss even in more depth the love of Allah. Now, you cannot just get to love Him the way we should unless we really know Allah. And for us to actually know Allah is something that is quite impossible. But again, we should actually strive and do our best to do so. It is often said that whoever knows Allah loves Him, and whoever loves Allah, Allah loves him. So there's this profound relationship between the believer and the divine. And this is the cornerstone of Islamic spirituality. So when we talk about the love of Allah, the first thing we need to discuss is the understanding of divine love in the first place. So the love of Allah is not merely an emotional state. It is a deep, abiding connection that transforms the believer's life. So this love is rooted in the recognition of Allah's attributes. So His mercy, His compassion, His justice, and so on and so forth. So when individuals come to understand these qualities, they naturally develop this profound affection for their Creator. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the cycle of love. The cycle of love, that this statement in itself highlights the reciprocal kind of relationship that we have with Allah. So knowing Allah leads to loving Him, and this love in turn invites Allah's love towards the believer. It says here that my internet connection is unstable. Is that true? Can you hear me?
Your sound is perfect. It's just lagging a little bit, but we see you in the PowerPoint. It's fine.
Okay. So this is the importance of understanding the cycle of love. Another thing is the ultimate reward. So the ultimate success, the ultimate victory, it comes from this relationship. So it is not just a matter of personal satisfaction. It is the promise of paradise, of joy and eternal bliss. And again, the idea of paradise in itself has different levels of understanding, different levels of perception. People, as we discussed last time, some people be inclined to, go to paradise just to enjoy the materialistic gains, whereas others would just be more than satisfied to be in the company of Sayyidina Rasulullah alayhi salatu wassalam and the companions. Others, their ultimate goal is just to be in, God's presence. So it differs. The idea of paradise itself differs. The notion itself is different from one person to another. So that's the ultimate reward thing. Another thing, understanding those qualities, understanding those attributes would actually lead to humility and reverence. The word reverence is so important. Reverence also has to do with adab. I don't know if some of you know the word in Arabic. In Arabic, we call it adab, which is to have this kind of good conduct, to have this kind of behavior, good behavior, attitude. You have this good attitude towards Allah. You have to have this kind of adab with Rasulullah ﷺ and God. All right, so whoever truly understands the meanings of those names, they will witness in their hearts the greatness of Allah, which will overflow into the heart this kind of humility and submission before the Almighty. So the completeness of servitude can only be achieved through complete humility and obedience to Allah. Listen to this one. There was this one of the scholars, one of the prominent scholars in religion, was heard saying the following. Listen to that. He said, let me just share this with you. He said, I entered upon Allah through all the doors of obedience. Again, that's what the scholar said. I entered upon Allah, meaning that I was striving to maintain my journey towards Allah through all doors of obedience, but at each door I found a crowd and I was unable to enter until I came to the door of humility and needlessness. And behold, it was the closest door to Him and the widest, with no one to compete with me there and no obstacles. As soon as I placed my foot at its threshold, He, God, glory be to Him, took my hand and admitted me to Him. So what is this all about? He's just, he's using this metaphor to show us that in his journey to Allah, he tried to knock all kinds of doors, like to be, for example, kind to others, to be generous to others, to be whatever. But whenever he tried any of these doors, he found that there were lots of other people competing. If you're talking generosity, we find lots of people who are willing to sacrifice their money, their wealth, everything for the sake of Allah. If you're talking, for example, worship, no matter how many prayers you would do a day or recitation of the Quran, you might find people who would compete you, would actually surpass you. But the door that was so special was the door of humility, and that is the fastest when it is done, in truthfulness. When when you really honestly feel that you are in need of him, that you have no strength, no power except through him and by him, then that would actually be the closest and the fastest door and pathway to Allah. So I just wanted to share with you these words. They were so enlightening to me. All right. So from there, let us go to yes. After humility and reverence, we need to see this one, which is tranquility, certainty, and contentment. My God, yeah, I mean, those are the three targets, my three main targets in life, actually. As a life coach, I think I remember telling you that I used to work as a life coach. So they would always advise us to think of what is our, the highest, the supreme goal that we want to achieve in life. And usually I would consider tranquility, certainty, and contentment. That is the state I want to be in. So whatever I do, whatever practices I do, they're always, targeted for me to reach this kind of tranquility, certainty, and contentment. It differs from one person to another, but I'm just sharing something with you about myself. Right, so tranquility is this inner peace, calmness that arises from faith and reliance on God. It is the feeling of being at ease, knowing that Allah is in control of all matters, that He's aware of your circumstances. And when you truly, truly believe in this, you feel this kind of tranquility, because you ask yourself, is there anything I can do about this one thing? And if the answer is yes, you need to think of, okay, so let me do it. 1, 2, 3. If the answer is no, then what? It is either you're a believer and you have it in you that you truly believe that God sees me, God hears me, God knows me, God is there with me. And in this case, tranquility will arise, or anxiety, because I'm not sure. I believe in God, but I'm not really sure that He would be supporting me in this one. It differs. But tranquility, if you really have this, especially at times of test, at times of difficulty, then that is a big sign that you do have trust in Him, that you really have reached this idea of tawakkul, relying on Him. We'll come to reliance in a few minutes. Now, certainty signifies a strong and unwavering belief in Allah's existence, His attributes and His promises. So it is the assurance that Allah will fulfill His promise and that everything happens according to His divine wisdom. Divine wisdom. Listen again. Everything happened according to His divine wisdom, not according to what we want. And I remember discussing this also in the previous session, that usually we are let down because we think that since I am a good believer, I'm a good servant to Allah, I've been doing all my chores, my responsibilities as a servant of God, then deep down inside, I think that, okay, so He would be listening to my prayers. He would be granting me what I want, as if listening to your prayers and answering your prayers only means that He will grant you what you want. And if that doesn't happen, you're let down. That in itself needs us to stand here, to pause, to reconsider what is it that we understand about God. God has never said that He will answer your prayers the way you want them to be answered, but He will be answering your prayers according to His divine wisdom, which might at times mean that your prayers will not be answered to grant you what you actually need. I'm sure most of you know the difference between wanting something and needing it. So, which is, of course, a different topic that we can discuss later in depth. So the certainty strengthens a believer's faith and helps them navigate life's challenges with confidence. As for the word contentment, it is a state of being satisfied with Allah's decree, accepting whatever comes one's way. So whether it is good or bad, and again, good and bad, is defined, differently. So the way God defines good and bad is different from the way I understand good and bad. So we have to have this kind of deep trust in Allah's plan and recognition that He knows what is best for His creation. So contentment leads to gratitude, and it helps believers maintain a positive outlook even in difficult times. That brings us to the word reliance. So reliance actually has those, sorry, there are three. I'm sorry, there's a mistake here. The meaning of reliance has three: the basis of reliance, the fruits of reliance, and the levels of reliance. So let me just go through this again quickly. So reliance, as you all know, is relying and depending on God. Okay. You do whatever you have to do, and then you totally rely on Him. And I hope you have reached the point where you don't find any kind of contradiction between doing what you have to do, because relying on Him does not mean that, okay, I'm not going to work, He's going to provide for me. Of course not. You need to do your part, okay, in this world, because this is the world where we have the action and reaction kind of thing, and we need to do our part. But then we totally believe that whatever comes because of what I have done is not because of my action. Meaning, if I work hard and I gain money, now this money that I gained, I should believe that it is not purely because of my work. It is rizq. This is what God has actually demanded that I will be provided with. So the way you see things is actually different from people who do not believe in God. Now, the basis of reliance is knowledge. Knowledge. So the knowledge of Allah's names and attributes is the foundation of reliance upon Him. You cannot rely on Him if you really do not know His attributes. So when one comprehends that God is all-powerful, all-wise, all-merciful, and He's the sustainer, it naturally leads to entrusting one's matters to Him. And you know what? It really demands that we have this, open eye kind of thing. You need to keep your eyes open and see how things happen in your life, because I'm sure each one of us would come across times when you would be granted something that you never dreamt of, out of nowhere. Okay, that's not out of nowhere, by the way. It is out of God's providence and his care for you. So sometimes you may actually gain money or whatever with no prior effort from your side. Why is that? Because God is reminding you that He is the all provider. Other times you might do everything you can and you end up not having what you wished for. Why is that? Because again, God is reminding you it's never 1 + 1 = 2, but it doesn't work that way. You might think it is, but it's not. So these are reminders, just reminding us how things really are. The fruits of reliance. Now, you will never be able to attain what we discussed in the previous slide, which is the tranquility, the certainty, the contentment, without actually having reached the point of reliance. Okay, and that knowing for sure that God is in control of everything. The last thing is the levels of reliance. So there's the highest level. So it's in degrees. The highest level is when the heart is completely and utterly devoted to Allah, having no reliance on any other being or thing. So this level is achieved through sincere faith, through deep knowledge of Him, through constant remembrance of Him. And when you reach that point, whatever you're granted, be it small or big, let's say, for example, ice cream. If my daughter steps in now, bringing me some ice cream that I needed because, Egypt is quite hot these days. So if that happened, that I really wish some ice cream, and I find her coming in, Mom, see this, I've just bought you some ice cream. Now, I would definitely thank her for that. It's very thoughtful of you. But then immediately, I would feel that it is a gesture from God. This is the point. You don't stop at point where she brought me this. She had some money and she brought me some ice cream. It's much more than that. And this is how a believer tends to have this deeper level of understanding everything that happens in his life and sees it from a different perspective, which would then lead to the joy and delight in worship. But then, you know what, when I was reading about that, the joy and delight in worship, to be very honest with you guys, I was a bit troubled, because at times I don't really enjoy that kind of joy and delight in worship. Sometimes worship is, I'm sorry to say this, a struggle, right? But then I also was able to find out that there are levels of worship, and there are 3, maybe more, but the ones that I found were 3. And there's a very important reminder that every level counts. Every level is important. It's not like the only best or the only acceptable level is the one with the joy and the delight. No, believe me, God also grants you sawab and blessings because of your struggle. If you're at level 1 where you're still struggling with the worship, if you're still struggling to pray, if you're still struggling to fast, whatever, right, or to even stay honest, to tell the truth at all times, this is what we call in Arabic mujahada. Mujahada comes from the word jihad, has to do with the war, conflict, struggle, strife. Now that in itself is something that God appreciates. So those who have reached level 3, which is the delight in worship, that would be, of course, magnificent, and that would be in itself a great blessing from God. But then again, those who are still level 1, where they're struggling, remember that each time you struggle and you overcome yourself and you stand there and you pray, whether it's hot or cold, whether you're sleepy or tired, that in itself is actually something appreciated by God, and you're being granted levels for that. All right, so the struggle against the self, that's the first level for before you reach the delight in worship. So at that initial stage, worship it involves, as we said, struggles. But then again, the struggle is a crucial step in the path of spiritual development. So you need to actually appreciate that you're going through that point, and instead of seeing it as, how long will I be, stuck in that level where I'm still struggling? I need to enjoy my worship. Well, hang on. Hang on there, and inshallah, I pray to God to grant you the 3rd level. But before you reach the 3rd level, you need to go through the second is the habit of worship. So instead of struggling, it's a habit that we pray all 5 prayers a day. And that has, of course, pros and cons. The good thing is that you have established the habit. Now you're entitled to pray all 5 prayers. Maybe the downside of it is that because it's a habit, you might not actually enjoy it. You may not actually feel or sense how that this kind of spiritual connection, you don't really examine every verse that you recite and so on and so forth, because it is now mostly like a subconscious kind of thing. You do it just like a habit. But then again, it is one level higher than the previous one, and then for you, inshallah, to reach the 3rd, it requires truthfulness, it requires dua, it requires help and support from God. And that is the ultimate level of worship, where the believer finds joy and delight in serving Allah. So it arises, one way of really achieving this is by reading, embracing, understanding the attributes of God. So that is, before we jump to the other point, I just wanted to say something about the joy also and delight in worship. Sayyidina Rasulullah ﷺ, the Prophet, said, there are 3 qualities that whoever possesses them will find the sweetness of faith. talking about the joy and delight in worship, Sayyidina Rasulullah was actually pointing out that there are three ways, okay, or qualities, sorry, three qualities that whoever possesses them will find the sweetness of faith, okay? The first one is that Allah and His Messenger are more beloved to Him than anything else. And by the way, that in itself is a complete worship on its own. It demands a lot of understanding, a lot of work to reach a point where Allah and His Messenger would be beloved by you more than anything else. That's a big thing. I hope, inshallah, that will be granted this. Second thing is that He loves a person only for the sake of Allah. Okay. And the third thing is that He hates to return to disbelief after Allah has saved him from it, just as He would hate to be thrown into the fire. All right, so if you have those three qualities, you would actually eventually reach the sweetness of faith. You will taste it. All right, now, if we move on to the general joy, right, the general joy of absolute happiness. So whoever knows God will not find a way for sadness to enter his heart. I mean, that kind of devastating kind of sadness that, or despair. There's no sadness with God ever. So this is why our Prophet said to his companion, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, in the cave, he said, do not be sad. Indeed, Allah is with us. So the joy of the believer in the Lord is greater than the joy anyone feels from what they rejoice in, whether it be a beloved, wealth, power, anything else. You see them joyful when others are sad. You see them at ease when others are troubled. Those believers, they experience, some of the states of the people of paradise while still they are in this world. So it was even narrated by a scholar or a famous religious figure called Ibrahim ibn Adham. He said, if kings and their sons knew what we are in, meaning our happiness in worshiping God, especially at night, they would fight us for it with swords. So again, the idea of general joy and absolute happiness, and I remember reading lots of books about, is there anything as happiness in this world, utter happiness? And of course, this is very argumentative, but then again, you might consider, it depends on your definition of the word happiness. If you're talking, happy meaning that you have all the worldly possessions, then that is definitely that is not what we mean. But absolute happiness, again, it has to do with contentment. It has to do with serenity. It has to do with tranquility. So, and then once you reach that point, you will be enjoying, your connection with God, with His Messenger, even when you're lying at the beach, for example, with your kids maybe playing around, but then you look at the sea, and just by looking at the sea, you see it differently. It's not only, waves that you can see in front of you, but you might actually resonate with the sea waves, the way they do zikr. They, you would feel that when you say subhanallah, like you're resonating with those waves, because you know that even though everything that God has created, actually they are in a state of zikr. They remember Him and they recite His names somehow. So that in itself would result in happiness, in connection with nature, in connection with the divine, in connection with yourself. So and that would lead to this kind of purification. And purification is repentance and turning to God. So, and that can happen, as you know, every day, every minute, whenever you feel that you need to repent. And it doesn't have to be because you did something wrong, by the way. Just because you have forgotten about Him for some time, just because you were carried away with all the worldly matters, and you want to cleanse that heart, you want to regain this kind of connection, this level of, of closeness. So you can do this so easily by just, I think that one very good way of cleansing your heart is by, staying in solitude for a few minutes. Complete solitude, like you tell your kids, tell everyone around you that you don't want to be disturbed for a few minutes, and you decide how many minutes you need. Could be 5, could be 10. Usually young people who would start this kind of meditation or contemplation, they would start it from 10 to 15 minutes max. And during that time, you ask God first for this kind of connection, and you ask him to inspire you with a name that can help you to reconnect. And then you breathe in, deeply and slowly, and then you close your eyes, and then you start concentrating on that name, and things will happen. I mean, if you repeat a name, God, one of the holy names of God, that you feel that God has granted you during that time of meditation, and you keep repeating that word or that name, you might actually find that there's this cleansing going on, that there's this, your spirituality is taking up a different level. So repentance doesn't have to be like, doing certain things or just praying to, 2 rak'ahs or reading certain verses. As I said, it can be as simple as just sitting in solitude. Now, that was, I think, an important introduction that I needed to do before we start our first name, which is Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jalla Jalaluhu. There's a lot to say about that name, and to the point that I don't think one session would be enough. I would definitely need more than that. So for today's session, I'll just start first by discussing why is it that this name is so unique. Now, in the Arabic language, the word ilah, or God, has actually 4 meanings. Right? So the first one is the one who is truly, truly worshipped. And we have to underline the word truly, because there are lots of things and people that are worshipped, but they're not truly worshipped. They don't deserve to be worshipped. So the one who is truly and well deserved to be worshipped is God. So that's the first meaning. And the second one is the one to whom people turn for refuge and help in times of distress. And you can see this especially like in one of the verses of the Quran, that has to do with being in the middle of this wild sea where you're about to feel that you're drowning or something. Then that is the time when you find yourself in your heart really, directed towards God and no one but him. The third meaning is the one who is loved with the greatest love, the utter kind of love, because you might find yourself attached to other people or things to a point where you don't find in your heart that place where you would actually be worshiping him the way he needs or he should be worshipped. And then the fourth one is the one who overwhelms and compounds the intellects when contemplating him. You cannot really reach a point where you would say, Khalas, I now know everything about God. There is no way that you can actually encompass everything about God or his attributes all in all. We're just striving, we're trying, but we'll never be able to reach the ultimate understanding of God, except maybe later in heaven if he grants us that. So I just wanted to say something here, that the point where yes, for the fourth part, which is the one who overwhelms and confounds, says here that Allah has secrets and great deeds and magnificent attributes. So the confusion here is not in the sense of doubt, but in the sense of reverence and awe. So as God says, for example, in the Quran, and they encompass not a thing of his knowledge. So not one can fully comprehend Allah, neither a sent prophet nor a close angel, no one. So he also says that no vision can grasp him, but he grasps all vision. So this means that Allah is not exalted. He's more exalted, sorry. He's higher and greater than being encompassed by knowledge or sight. All right, so these were, the most important meanings for Allah that we wanted to discuss today. And another thing that I wanted to discuss with you is the idea of love, or the third one, the one who is loved with the greatest love, because again, this is really important. And that could be a cure for a disease that most of us actually been afflicted with, and that is attachment. When you are not, because there's a difference between love and attachment, love and dependency. So, because one of the things that I was really into reading was codependency, and how that codependency in itself, it means that there's this void inside you that you feel that needs to be, fulfilled, and you are unable to fulfill it spiritually, and therefore you found yourself, attached to other people or other things, be it your kids, your friends, whatever, and that would actually lead to this kind of attachment. And once that happens, you're put in a situation where it's one of the two things. It's either that God really loves your heart and he really wants you back to him, and in this case, you will be sent back to him by, cutting this kind of attachment between you and this other thing. And as painful as this is, as beneficial it is, because it will then get you to see and witness and live the meaning of being attached to only him. Or you're not that, he's not really keen on winning your heart back, especially for the ones who do not believe in him. And in this case, he will just leave them to enjoy whatever bad links they have or whatever attachments they're enjoying with others. So this is what we mean by having no real love except him. And it reminds us of the hadith that we mentioned earlier today in the session, that has to do with that one of the signs of true belief is that you have God and his messenger as, the supreme kind of love, that there's no other love in your heart that surpasses that. And this is not easy, by the way. It needs some kind of, purification of the heart to be attained. So I will stop here at this point where we discuss those ideas about Allah's names, and then we'll continue more with more in-depth. Actually, there are a few philosophical things that we'll be discussing, inshallah, next session, that I think would actually enable us to reach a level of understanding of the name of Allah even more profoundly. So